Hello, this is Maddox here, and today we'll be taking a look at the episodes of Animaniacs within the first week of November of '93 on this episode of Animaniaugust. We begin with another mime time segment. This time, the mime is holding a bouquet of imaginary flowers, which gets absorbed by bees. Oh, silly Mio. After the stained glass window of Lead Mabel, the future director, is destroyed by an operatic prima donna's high notes. The Warner Brothers and the sister Doug get revenge on her during her performance of Carden. This is an update to the classic cartoon Long-Haired Hare, which stars Bugs Bunny. It's even referenced in the fact that they say "This means waters" as a parody of "This means war," which is one of Bugs Bunny's catchphrases. This segment overall is a neat new take on a classic. Putting on the Blitz. This is probably the darkest of these cartoons featuring Rita and Runt, as it takes place during the Nazi invasion of Poland in 1939. The leader of the Polish underground, avoiding the Germans, and his daughter Katrina waves to Rita and Runt, who have wound up in the city after a wrong turn heading for Burbank, which of course is a reference to the classic Looney Tunes cliche, "I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque," which coincidentally originates from a anti-Nazi cartoon made during World War II, where that was Bug's first time ever saying it. Overall, this is just surprisingly dark for not even just a Read and Run cartoon, but just Animaniacs as a whole. They've made other war cartoons, but this is probably the most serious of them all. The Great Rockarati, the summer concert. This is the second Great Rockarati short, and even reads the animation for the first. In this case, he belches his way through Emil Care Punchelli's Dance of the Hours. It's the same joke, just with a different song. Now we get to another mime time. In this mime time, the mime climbs an imaginary mountain, but eventually gets pummeled by falling rocks. We then move on to our next episode, which begins with the Waters riding down a garden hose out of the tower to begin that episode. Chairman of the board. This segment is definitely very interesting. At a big dinner that they were uninvited to and they crash, they meet a fellow who goes by the name Francis Pumphandle, but he prefers to be called Pip, who tells them a story about Bob Barker and bologna and cheese balls all day and all night with no hesitation. This is a very simple concept, but it definitely does work. His story is so long and overdone that the Animaniacs Wiki had to put down his whole full story. And because then he's voiced by none other than political commentator Ben Stein. Pleased to meet you, Yakko. The name's Francis Pumphandle, but everyone calls me Pip. Cheese balls are one of my all-time favorite foods. I always seem to meet the most interesting people when I'm around them, too. In fact, cheese balls bring to mind the time I met Bob Barker, star of the most popular morning game show. He's an MC, a host, and a celebrity all rolled into one. Anyway, 8 months ago, it was Tuesday 17th. I believe, or it might have been the 18th. No, it was definitely the 17th. Because it was precisely 1 week after my Aunt Lucretia's birthday, which is the 10th. Aunt Lucretia's quite a woman. Loves to cook. She prepares fabulous warshua. That's a Chinese duck dish. I love Chinese food. I once went to a party where they served Chinese food and cheese balls. Now that's a catch-22 situation. Catch-22 was a movie, you know. It was long, very long. I think the book was better than the novel, and I never finished reading those things. Of course, a lot of people don't read much out of it. They watch television. I caught a program on PBS last night. A very good show on chimpanzees in the media. They had a clip of J. Fred Muggs, the chimp from the Today Show. No, Frederick Beach's girlfriend had me stumped. I couldn't remember her name, so I looked it up. Her name was Phoebe Beebe. Anyway, as I was saying, I went down a nice, relaxing stroll. I love to relax. In fact, relaxing is a pastime of mine. Some people play golf. Others like chess, horses, bridge, canasta, and other such fancy hobbies. Now, another hobby is about my really. My grandma was a great knitter. She knitted the sweater I was wearing. It's rare. It's not my favorite color. I have also mostly yellow. So I'm gonna be wrong. I'm looking for sizes to better, so I'm sorry I prefer more natural colors. But when I'm relaxing, I don't care what I wear. Long pants were made of shorts, t-shirts, or formal attire. Yeah, if it goes, now I'm so cute. Here's my relaxing stroll. I don't have wearing my herringbone jacket. My house in Nevada souvenir town. My charcoal bracelets, or the navy slacks. I suppose it doesn't really matter. What? There's just comfort. You know, I love comfort. Goes along with the pastime of mine, relaxing. Now for me, nothing more relaxing than a nice leisurely stroll. Like the one I took 8 months ago on the 17th. It was a bright sunny day, which of course is the ultimate condition for relaxed strolling. I just walked around. I found myself humming a haunting melody. I kept humming and humming and humming and humming. I couldn't get the tune out of my head. I racked up my brains coming up with the title, but no avail. It seemed not terribly musical, and yet I always wanted to play an instrument and be like a musical hero, Leo Sailor. But who could it be with Leo? I think I was just scared I would fail. Well, I decided right there and go buy musical instruments. So on the particular Tuesday 75, which I was referring, I went down to 6th Street Music Emporium to buy a new tambourine, a terribly soothing instrument, contrary to popular opinion. Now as I was strolling along, I detected a wonderful scent in the morning air. What could it be? I asked myself. So I went down toward that marvelous scent, distracted by its aroma from my musical mission. The odor was a mix of orchard flowers and bologna, which of course is one of the world's most underappreciated luncheon meats. That pimento leaf. I love a good pimento leaf and mayo sandwich. The more pimentos, the better. Why? Just to mention pimentos made just stand up and say, howdy. Now there's an interesting word, howdy. Is it from how are you? Or maybe how you do it? Howdy is one of these strange words that really has no origin. It's like saying how do, more than howdy, more formal, I think. Not too flowery. There's a flowery aroma of the particular body car carried me out by fragrant crush. Now, the smell was actually less bologna, more orchard. Beautiful flower found the island safe away. Of course, I was in Hawaii, so I needed to search out the location of the orchard. So I visited every florist shop in town. Well, to make a long story short, now a single flower shop in my town had any orchard stock. You seem mighty curious to me. Now, as you know, curiosity killed a cat, but I'm just not a feline. I wasn't too worried. Feel like the friendly creatures, don't you think? I had a cat once. I used my claws to tear my living room couch to shreds. It was a comfy couch too. Had a sleepaway bed. It with a foam rubber mattress. Now I bought the couch and the mattress at Levine's department store on 3rd Avenue the very same evening of that relaxing stroll affirmation. I also bought myself a lovely tambourine on the same style as anyway, I don't want to pay extra for the delivery of the couch, so I decided to carry the couch home myself. It was quite cumbersome. Getting it through the store's revolving doors was a bit of a challenge. As I just I had merged my street. By accident, I bumped into a welder's bed with an orchard and a label. It was Bob Barker, and he was eating a bologna and cheese ball sandwich. Well, it's been nice chatting with you. Over 6 minutes of talking, and this was basically the condensed version. In universe, it must have been way longer. Honestly, 6 minutes. The iPad voice actor was either very tired or it was just improv. Anyway, after the end of the short, the Warners, after being annoyed, when he leaves, they cry and say it's too quiet. Overall, this is pretty interesting, and it's definitely funny. You know how I said in the first episode that Yakko's universe didn't mention the planets after all? Well, this is why. The Planet Song. Sung by Yakko Warner. He sings about all the planets. From Mercury to Venus to Earth to Mars to Jupiter, Saturn and Neptune and Pluto, back when that was a planet. But of course Wacko mentions, "You forgot Uranus." To which Jacko says, "Good night, everybody." Honestly, it's just hilarious how they just made this educational planet song just to build up to a Uranus joke. It's just hilarious to me. Astro Buttons. It's another Buns and Mindy short. And this time they go to space. With cameos of Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock to boot. Honestly, this is just another one of those same old Buds and Mindy cartoons. Honestly, it's just, the thing is that, they try to use the tree-shaped chase formula, but it just doesn't really work as other chase cartoons. The end of this episode has the Warners jump back via trampoline back to the water tower for Raph Tikar forces them to. We then get to the next episode, which has an intermission, a framing device of cartoons in Wacko's body, where Yakko and Dot diagnose Wacko for some cartoons. And the first cartoon they diagnosed stuck in his ear is Noah's Lark. This is a cartoon featuring the Hip Hippos. However, despite them being the main characters, this is actually very good. Because this is a neat parody of the biblical story of Noah. There's a lot of gags in here. Noah is based on the comedian Richard Lewis. When one of the writers was interviewed by the YouTube channel The Nostalgia Critic, the writers admit that Lewis was jokingly critical towards his impression. His agent called the staff to say that while he and Lewis found the cartoon very funny, they requested that next time they don't just steal their material. There's also Noah asking what an ark is at the beginning also leads into an Indiana Jones reference. And of course, probably the most famous moment is the animals that load onto the ship. The bunnies are Buster and Babs Bunny. No relation. Which Noah replies, "Let's hope not. This is a children's show. Bunnies check." And of course, Piggy the Brain are there, with Piggy and Drag as the mice, and Noah says, "Well, I can't judge." And of course, we all can't forget the fact that Noah outright said, "Oh my God," with God himself saying, "Precisely." This was during a time when this is of course a reference to the fact that saying the Lord's name in vain is breaking one of the Ten Commandments. And back then, saying the Lord's name in vain on children's television was basically considered unfathomable. So it definitely shocked a lot of viewers upon hearing it, especially in a segment that's supposed to be about Noah's Ark. The narrator is also voiced by Ernie Anderson, who's best known as his time for the ABC network. And of course, he announces the Ark as the Love Ark, a parody of his iconic announcement of the Love Boat, as in the show The Love Boat. All in all, Noah's Ark, if you had to watch one Hip Hippo segment that, they're actually the main characters and not just characters used as a plot device, then this is the one. Now we get to the second cartoon in Wacko's body. The Big Kiss. This one is a chicken boo segment, and this is why where the big kiss becomes a hot Hollywood supermodel. Like, you know, I mean, like, they just, they just treat him like he's Fabio or something. I mean, or some other guy, or something. I don't know. Hmm. And, and of course, they even call him the sexiest man in Hollywood. They used the word sexy on a children's show on Saturday mornings in the 90s. That was quite impressive. And it films a major kiss scene with an actor with Hello Nurse, the actress, who is definitely wearing a skin-tight dress. This also introduces the more iconic introductory sequence, which replaces the Brady Bunch collage with him simply looking in the mirror and seeing disguises. Honestly, this is definitely something I'm surprised that got away with a lot more than other shows did. But you know, this was Fox. They were doing the bare minimum of what the FCC wanted. Like this, I mean, this was coincided with when the Simpsons was at its most controversial, when there were entire parent groups protesting the show. So yeah, I'm not really too surprised that they got away with as much in this segment or even this whole show as they did. But you know, it's interesting. I like it. In this final cartoon, Wacko Warner, it seems to have gone a toothache, but it wasn't really a toothache. He was just having a hiccup. This is a segment about the good feathers. Well, the good feathers getting a hiccup. Squid in this case. After eating a breadcrumb, so best tell Bobby a tip to get rid of him. Characters of several celebrities that were popular at the time appear at the beginning of the short. And I do like the joke about the Mouseketeers and the Musketeers getting mixed up, as in like Mickey Mouse Club Mouseketeers. Overall, it's a very interesting addition to the Goodfeather saga. The episode ends with Wacko seeming to have been cured. But there's one problem. Oh, my bottom hurts. And of course, Yakko, being Yakko Warner himself, iterates, "Good night, everybody." Overall, this episode, the framing devices definitely doesn't make sense. And besides Hiccup, the cartoons have not really much to do with the framing device. It just seems like a very last minute thing, kind of. Even real Hiccup doesn't really have anything to do because Wacko's got a toothache, not a hiccup. It just kind of feels like just something they threw together at the last second as filler. But all in all, it's still better than having 3 more additional commercials, so, you know, count your blessings and all that stuff. Clowning out. The CEO of Warner Bros., Thaddeus Plotz, hires a clown for Wacko's birthday party, unaware that Wacko has an irrational fear of clowns. That's even worse than Thaddeus Plotz's own. This is also one of the few segments that has a happy ending for both parties. The clown gets sent to Mars. And the Martians don't try to eat him or kill him or anything. They like his music. The main reason why he's a CEO is that the clown was not acting out of mouse. He was simply doing his job as a birthday party performer that was hired by Thaddeus Plotz and wasn't doing anything out of malice or anything wrong, really. Also, the term clownophobia is actually wrong. The correct term is chorophobia. And there's even a reference to Stephen King's iconic book and movie, now pretty much movies since the remake, It, with the line, "A clown is not a giant spider." And spoiler alert, but Pennywise the clown from the movie It, he's his true form was a giant spider. There's also a bunch of other references, like like the reference to John Wayne Gacy, one of the first evil clowns to really be known. Pogo the Clown, as he was known on stage, murdered several people and kept their bodies inside a crawl space of his own house, which is referenced in the line, "A clown not bite me and throw me in the basement." This is also one of the few times where Dr. Scratcher Stiff isn't really tortured in this throughout the entire thing. All in all, it's a pretty good episode. Bubba Boba Brain. This is the episode. This is an episode where Pinky the Brain become country music managers. The idea is that country music is so dumb, and the people listening to it are also dumb that anything they say the fans would take at face value. So Pinky the Brain decide. Well, Brain becomes a country singer, with Pinky posing as his manager, with Brain's songs being about subliminal messages to get every listener involved to make them their world leader. There's also appearances from other country celebrities, including several country stars that appeared in the show Hee Haw and the radio show The Grand Ole Opry, along with Billy Ray Cyrus, Glenn Campbell, and Kenny Rogers. Pinky's alias is also Colonel Pinky, a reference to Colonel Parker, who was the longtime manager of Elvis Presley, despite the fact that Elvis isn't a country singer. The episode also has a character of Dolly Parton, in which Brain says, "I say puberty was inordinately kind to you," a reference to, well, Dolly Parton. Well, if you know Dolly Parton, well, you know Dolly Parton, and if you don't know Dolly Parton, then just look up. Just do your own digging. We wrap things up with a wheel of morality. And this time, it also has an Elvis reference, as Elvis lives in our hearts, in his music, and in a trailer park outside Milwaukee. This is obviously a reference to the conspiracy theory that Elvis is still alive. Next up, we get to the Animaniaugust special presentation. A title card that is obviously a pastiche of CBS's special presentation card at that time. And so, what's so special about this special presentation? Wacko's not wearing any pants. That is all. In this one, we get an interesting framing device, and really just an interesting concept overall. The Warners are cooking a stew, and they have mixed up the cartoon's traditional formulas, which by this point are basically well established, in order to make some new concepts. In the Garden of Mindy, in the fairy of the Garden of Eden, Mindy appears alongside Brain, who places buttons, as Brain tries to prepare for a plan for world domination, all the while watching over Mindy's mischief. However, let's not go as he's a bruised, dizzy due to be played by Mindy, and smelling terrible because of him falling in Mindy work. Brain also is reprimanded by Mindy's mom for allowing Mindy to feed him old cheese rather than buttons. Overall, it's an interesting combination. There's also notable for being one of the few times the TMS animation got to animate a full cartoon starring Mindy, as the buttons in Mindy's cartoons are usually animated by ACOM. Well, we know what the brain's been up to, but what about Pinky? Well, Pinky's still in the lab. However, he's got a feline foe, Rita the cat. who's trying to eat him up. And eventually succeeds. Pinky actually likes it in Rita's stomach, saying that there's real me accommodations. There's also one of the few times where Rita doesn't sing, because of the short time frame in this episode. The scene of Pinky making faces in a dish bowl was also used for the theme song for the Pinky and the Brain spinoff, which is interesting. No place like homeless. So, we now know where Rita is, but what about Runt? Well, he's been teamed up with Pesto of the Goodfellas. However, he is the only Goodfellas that appears, as it's presumed that the others are basically on their own. As really, they don't appear, spoiler, they don't appear in any of the later segments. This segment's also notable for name-dropping Donald Trump, who at the time was a famous realtor, but now he's the President of the United States. Now we have Katie Kaboo. This is definitely a really awkward introduction, as we've never seen Katie Kaboom before, and in this case it's supposed to be a segment that's supposed to distract the formula. Of course, Katie Kaboom's gimmick is that she explodes upon the tiniest things. In this case, he explodes when realizing that that boyfriend is a giant chicken. And funnily enough, one of the frames of the show became used for Animaniacs merchandise featuring Chicken Boo. We then lead to the segment of Dottie the Squirrel. Dot is in the place of Slappy the Squirrel. This short cartoon features Dottie the Squirrel. And then, of course, Dot responds that her name is Dot, and if you call her Dottie, you die. Skippy does briefly appear. But, of course, Slappy is gone because she's off. The final big segment of the show is Baghdad Cafe. She takes the place of Dot in a cartoon where the warriors besiege the Iraqi palace for the Baghdad Cafe. And since it's a cartoon about Iraq in the 90s, we got a special appearance from So Darn Insane, which is obviously Saddam Hussein, who, despite his dictatorial powers, simply tries to convince him that this is not a restaurant, and even says that they are unlikely that Slappy and the Warner brothers would be siblings, as Slappy is of 10,000 years older than Sand. Which Yakko, of course, ad-libs the line saying she's adopted. And of course, we get an appearance from Flavio Hippo. And if you're wondering where Marita Hippo is, well, she's not in this entire episode. So, yeah, this is an interesting finale. Like, of course, it's just interesting because so Darn Insane is a takeoff of Saddam Hussein, and it really dates the cartoon, and really, it just, I mean, usually kids' cartoons can't really get away with mentioning dictators, but Saddam Hussein seemed to be the exception, really. As quite a bit of kids' cartoons had parodies of him, just largely because it was just unavoidable, because he was just pretty much all over the news at the time. So yeah. We then get one more Wheel of Morality segment, in which, in this case, you can teach an old dog new tricks, but you can't teach Madonna how to act. Well, this concludes this edition of Animaniaugust.